Shulodd, and hello, Zelamals. I am Matthew Carauddo, author and developer of Diamond Dragons, and today, in this video series called Diamond Discussions, we will chat with varying artists, our diamonds in the rough. Hey guys, Matthew here, creator and writer of Diamond Dragons, and I'm here with Saskia Baur. So,
Hello.
thank you. Welcome, Saskia, and tell the audience about you and your craft.
Well, my name is Saskia Baur. I am an actor, born and raised in Los Angeles, youngest of five kids, daughter of a Dutch immigrant, and my dad was a professor at UCLA.
Oh, really?
My name, Saskia, was actually the name of Rembrandt's wife. So my mom had an artistic streak that was sort of instilled in me. Started out as a ballet dancer when I was 4 years old and danced for 10 years. Always wanted to perform. That was sort of bred into me from it, and also probably living in LA. It's kind of in my blood. Growing up around the entertainment industry, growing up with people who were child actors, always wanted to be an actor.
Excellent, excellent. So, like, what is it that got you involved in acting, where you really, dug into it, and you were like,
Yeah,
this is something
yeah.
I want to do this. You know?
Well, honestly, my life took a different route. I always wanted to be an actor, but I was afraid. I was
Hmm.
a failure. I was afraid that I wasn't good enough. Grew up with a lot of self-esteem issues, as a lot of us have. And so when I was in my 30s, living in Santa Cruz, I had kind of a pre-midlife crisis breakdown where I really felt like I didn't do with my life what I wanted to do. And I felt this deep regret. I mean, deep. I mean, I think I was crying for a week. And I knew it was, I wanted to act and I really wanted to get in and start doing it. So my dear friend, Hallie Evans, who was the office manager of the place where I worked, gave me a flyer for an improv workshop in Santa Cruz at the Actors Theater in Santa Cruz, which is still there. And it was with David Razowsky, who is one of the founding members of Second City Chicago. Didn't know who he was, no idea. So I go to this improv workshop and it just blew my world apart. I mean, because growing up in the 80s in LA, I had this idea of being an actor, you had to look a certain way. You had to be tall, thin, and blonde, right? And that was the 80s, right? So when I took this improv workshop, I was like, there's young people here, there's older people here, there's this total cross section, and we can all do this. This is available to everyone.
Right.
And that sounds kind of like idiotic, but I really had this very narrow view of what acting was and what would qualify me to do it. So when I took this workshop with David Razowsky for like $40, here's this like incredible master improv technician. He just would come up to Santa Cruz because he loved Santa Cruz. And I got to take this master workshop with him, and it just opened everything up for me of like, I can do this. Like, I can actually do this. Like, this is for me. And that really helped me. In my first audition I went on, I did go on an audition after that, and I was terrible, bombed the audition. But you know what? It felt fantastic because I had no skill. I went to school, I went to UCSC, and my major was women's studies. I studied
Okay.
language and sociology and women's studies, gender studies. So when I did my first audition, I had no skill. I had no craft working for me. I bombed the audition. It was a terrible audition, but I felt great.
Right.
When I
You got that
left the
freedom.
Actors Theater, I felt great. I was like, I did something.
Yeah. Right.
Finally did something.
Yeah, and that's kind of it's a funny point that you bring up, Saskia, which is two things there, which is one, if anybody goes into any endeavor and they have no skill set in it whatsoever, they're bound to fail, but fail is always a negatively connotated word, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate, because I often used to say this to a lot of friends and partners of mine and whatnot. I'd be like, I would love to replace the word failure with experience,
Yes.
mostly physical performance, like backflips and things called butterfly twists or pop crescent moves, where you're like jumping and spinning and throwing kicks. And the failure rate, at that is, yeah, you need to make a lot of attempts at things before you actually successfully do it. And even your first successful execution of that technique is usually kind of janky. The first time you don't land on your back or your knees or something in a backflip, you're kind of
Yeah.
like, no hands on the floor, that's successful, but it's not necessarily a good one. But the point being is, it's like, you can't get good at anything unless you fail at
Absolutely.
it, which
it's
is
mandatory.
Code for experience.
Yeah.
Which is also brings us to the second point, which is, okay, so fine, if you didn't have an experience in it, then you go and try it, but then there's a freedom in trying something absolutely new. It's like the first time someone says, you want to play basketball? And you're like, I've never really played. And you're like, it's okay, I'm going to teach you something. And they just kind of, almost steamroller you through. And then at the end, you're kind of like, that was awesome,
Yeah.
And so I understand that, you maybe had that freedom, is what you're saying, is the first time.
Yeah, I felt almost actually kind of like I was kind of a few feet off the ground. I really felt like really light and good. And I was like, I did this thing, and I know I'm not going to get cast in this play, and it wasn't good, but I don't care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a great attitude to have towards it too, because I think so many people are hung up on, if I go and I attempt anything in life, if I don't succeed right away and everything doesn't, all the ducks don't end up in a line, well then of course I'm useless and the world sucks and I should just quit life. And you're sort of like, do you really think that's how it was with Al Pacino?
Yeah, and that's
he just
that
walked in
hole.
And he's like, here's my first acting role.
Yeah.
And then he just blew the world away. It's like when you look back at some of the footage of, pretty much anybody, Harrison Ford, Stallone, probably Cate Blanchett, although let's be honest, Cate Blanchett was perfect.
You know what? She was born perfect, so she's sort of excluded from this failure conversation.
But exactly.
Yeah, we can't.
So tell me more about then your craft. Like, what's some of the things that you found to be inspiring and interesting from your perspective?
Yeah, I've had the great fortune to work with some pretty incredible people. So David Rosowski was one of them.
Right.
To take many workshops with him in Santa Cruz, because I was in Santa Cruz for a long time, which is a big improv town. And then got to work with these two wonderful ladies, Clifford and Dixie. And they run the Fun Institute in Santa Cruz, and working with them was just so much, there was a lot of joy in it. Mm-hmm. And, I hear a lot of actors talk about, like, find the pockets of joy in this, mm-hmm. because sometimes as actors, we can kind of be like, we're like doing the grind, like early, like, oh, I'm gonna make this work. And it's like, yeah, but, is that fun? I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it's fun for some people. I don't know. But and then working with Lenny Dean in Sonoma County, who introduced me to Eric Morris technique, which is really about, you do a lot of work of, like, just how do I feel in this moment? And for me as an actor, what's been a struggle is that I tend to kind of live up here.
Right.
Cut off from here.
Sure.
Reconnecting with the whole mechanism, the instrument, as I've learned in Meisner, because I've recently started taking classes in Meisner with Rachel Adler in Berkeley, who is a phenomenal woman, amazing teacher, just all around amazing human being. Right. And just getting exposed to these different techniques and really, they even go beyond acting. I mean, they go into just being in life.
Right. Being
connected to people. I've always, as a kid, I was really sensitive, really had self-esteem issues. And for me, always had a fear of people. I was just afraid of people.
Interesting.
Afraid of getting hurt. And so a lot of these techniques have kind of showed me, like, it's okay to put vulnerability out. It's okay to be.
It's almost required.
It is required as an actor. Like, I've always been, like, a pretty defended person.
Right. That's
like, I'm gonna,
It's a tough one for an actor.
Tell you to go to hell before you tell me to go to hell.
Yeah.
Survival mechanism, right?
Yeah. In fact, it's funny you mentioned that too, which is, I was having a discussion with someone, I don't remember who right now, but I was trying to explain to them a little bit more about acting, because, they were mentioning how they thought, oh, well, how hard could it be? I mean, not exactly that irreverent, but I was trying to put in perspective. And I said, look, here's the thing is, you ever seen these performances? This is what I was asking them. I said, where someone is just straight up experiencing the worst of life. Their child has died in front of them in a car accident. They're going through a divorce, whatever. But I'm like, so how willing are you to express all that, not only to like your therapist or a partner or your family or friends, I'm like, but to an entire crew of people on set or whatever, or in a theater, and whether it's for film or a theater or whatever, it's going to be seen by thousands of people at one point, ostensibly. I mean, maybe someone's saying, well, no, I did a theater and only 50 people in the audience. I'm like, okay, thanks, boom. I got it. But the point being is, like, I'm like, you have to bare your soul. And then some of them were saying, well, I don't know about this. And I'm like, here's the thing though. Have you ever seen a performance where you didn't believe it? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, so that's someone putting up the shield. Putting up their Captain America shield to say, I'm only going to let you know a little bit. I'm going to give you some emotion, but it's behind this little wall here. And what I was trying to tell him, I was like, that isn't good acting. It's not good acting. You want to know why it's not good acting? Because it doesn't reach through the camera, take your soul, and just wiggle it a little bit, or in some cases, just straight up eviscerate it, and that's why when you see these pivotal moments in films and then you're there in the audience and the stuff going on, this is basically what happened. Someone basically said, I don't understand why people cry at movies. I'm like, really? Why is that? And I said, well, do you understand why people are happy at movies? And they said, yes. And I said, so what you're basically saying is it's okay to express this side of emotional content, but you're thinking the other one just seems questionable and wonky. Okay. And then you let them brew on that.
And it's societal, isn't it? Because vulnerability, showing emotion, I feel like the low-hanging fruit in society is anger. Like, anger is a currency that we trade in very easily. To show vulnerability, to have the courage to do that. There's a woman I love named Ginger Friedman who wrote a book on acting. I have it here somewhere. It is The Perfect Monologue. And she has this great piece in here where she talks about, if you desire to act because you are looking for acceptance, applause, adoration, and love, you probably won't get very far in this business.
Precisely. There we go. The author is Ginger Howard Freeman. I'm still learning these pins that you do on Zoom, and it makes you stay on. And
you're a hell of a lot more advanced than I am. I don't know how to do any of this.
Oh, and it's no big deal. I'm just winging it. Something that I was recently talking to a writer about too, that I said, some people just don't have the life experience that will get them in the right mindset to be able to approach writing, acting, even directing, because it's like you're unwilling to approach your emotions, and you're unwilling to confront them. You're unwilling to display them. And if any of those are true, then it's not a good fit.
I mean, and Ginger talks about that. She's like, when you are acting, you're giving love.
Exactly.
You're being of service. So you've got to give that.
Precisely.
And foremost. To your audience, to anybody who's watching you, it is actually a gift that you're giving. And so she kind of flips it, from in this world to get this attention, affection, and applause, which I don't know about you. For me, that's never worked out very well. That usually repels people away from me. But if I'm coming in the gift of service and I want to be collaborating with you, working with you, and working off of you, it works better.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The heavy subject. Tom Cruise recently,
I don't ever want to see it again.
There was this recording of him.
I see you do it again, you're gone. That's it. No apologies.
Explosive anger to some of the cast and crew. And personally, just to get this out of the way, I feel he's completely vindicated because of the science behind COVID-19 and these other kinds of things. What do you think of this kind of thing where someone is that passionate about production and how important drama and theater and film are, and the fact that we are here in 2020, even though we're on the end of 2020 at this point, that it's sort of a pivotal moment because this is unprecedented. We haven't been in this situation where a lot of people's livelihood is collapsed, and it's been just terrible for a lot of these people in, as they say, in the business. So what are your thoughts on Tom Cruise's sort of, admonishment of these people who were ostensibly not following protocols?
Well, I heard about it through Facebook, as I find out many things. I heard somebody reference it on a post. I didn't actually hear the actual rant. However, I did see someone comment specifically what you said, that what it was pertaining to was that people were not following safety guidelines.
Yes.
I've worked on a couple of productions since the lockdown, and they were very tight. I mean, there was a nurse on staff, had temperatures taken, there was a compliance officer there the whole time reminding people to put their masks back on. I am somebody who has comorbidity issues. I have thrombosis on my mom's side of the family, and also my day job is working in biotech. So I know specifically what COVID-19 can do to your body.
AKA science.
Right. It's unbelievable. Like this virus is dangerous. Right. It is not to be taken lightly. So, I mean, I think with regard to his reaction, if he's trying to keep people safe, it's warranted.
100%, yeah. Did you ever consider that maybe the reason that we got there was because all these other things had broken down into the situation where patience was not an option, listening, not an option, communication, not an option, and finally someone had to say, hey, I'm sick and tired of this. This is what's going to go on from now on. I'm done. Got it?
Well, yeah, and I had a similar experience on set with 13 Reasons Why. I was working background, and it was a scene with, why am I blanking on her name? The gal who plays Hannah's mom. Very famous, Grey's Anatomy, very famous actress. And the location they had chosen in Martinez was right by a Caltrain station, and we're shooting. So she has this very emotional monologue about Hannah. And then the train signal goes off, and she's like, what the fuck? And she didn't, to her credit, she didn't have a meltdown, but she was like, what the fuck? And I remember a couple of the other actors, I was like, oh God, she's such a diva. I'm like, no, she's not. She's trying to do her work. And whoever scouted this location either did it on a weekend when Caltrain wasn't running, or should have known that there's a train station right nearby.
Or there's also that other added thing to understand, that it's like mistakes are made sometimes in those situations where you're like, you can't control if a plane flies by. You can't,
of course.
Sometimes you can't think, oh, is there a train? Well, there wasn't supposed to be, but we went over schedule, and there's just 100 things that go into it. So it's like, I think the biggest problem in life sometimes, Saskia, and it's funny, I find myself saying this all the time, that I said one of the biggest skill sets that any human being can have is staying calm under great duress. And it's not easy, because if it were easy, everybody would do it.
And you go into the reptilian brain, right? Yeah. You go into fight or flight,
So I look at it like, if people have that skill set and they can continue to be reasonable under really terrible circumstances, it usually will save them in the long run. But it's true that, hey, everybody has a breaking point. I mean, be honest, if you were giving the performance of your life and it was ruined by like just a light fell down or something,
that happens all the time.
I know. But at the moment, it feels like a terrible thing where you were like, oh my God, I was so there. Like this was the one I wanted. I've had experiences like that. I had an entire sequence of me in the Darth Vader's, it's a long story. I used to do a lot of Star Wars live performances, and I was all suited up and I did all this stuff. And then it's a long story. We were just told, you can't film. And I was like, what? Like we're doing this great event, and there's going to be, I had live spark effects going on. It was going to look like I was deflecting blasters from all these people, and it was just like this cool. We had this smoke the fog machine. It's a long story, but I was like, oh man, are you kidding me? Like we did all this preparation, and then they're like, we changed our mind, you cannot film here. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, but the point is, you just go on and you live on with it. But at the time, it feels like being,
you feel like you sucker punched. You feel like you punched in the gut. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, speaking of sucker punches, let's go on to a few other questions. So, Saskia, what's the worst actor's habit that you feel that you have or maybe you had in the past that you had to work around, like one of the worst habits you think?
Acting.
I knew you were going to say that. Now stop it.
Yeah, I mean, I had to unlearn how to act.
Okay.
I came up in theater. I mean, that's, in theater, of course, you have to be bigger.
Right.
And I developed some really bad habits that I've had to unlearn through like the Meisner technique of coming back to what's the truth.
Right.
I love when people say actors are liars.
Oh, I don't love
I'm like, we are like the only ones telling the truth. Like we are striving to tell the truth.
Precisely. It's funny
about
that
the situation.
yeah.
I mean, Meisner is all about, telling the truth in the set circumstances, acting truthfully in imaginary circumstances.
Yeah, you have to, because if the
I
emotions
love
are
that.
real, nothing else matters. You could have the best lines in the world, but what does it matter if your emotions are all disjoint?
Yeah, and if you're acting, if you are putting stuff on top of it rather than it coming through you,
Right.
That's been the biggest challenge for me, because I was putting stuff on top of the lines all the time, forcing the emotion. And it's like, no, this isn't truthful. This is me acting and acting, and so I have had to really fight against those urges to put something on it.
Yeah.
Is responding truthfully to what the set givens, as Meisner calls them, the set circumstances.
Right, the circumstances, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also the reaction it's one thing when you have to record a monologue that's just yourself and you're doing it for like a self-tape or whatever. But I think the biggest thing that's important in that thing of like actor habits is not listening.
Yes, absolutely.
I remember even when I was much younger that I just felt like my partners weren't listening to me. And then you can't go anywhere for that.
Nope.
Sometimes I could go to the director and I would just say, look, I just want to say this. I'm not saying anything, but I'm going to say this is like, here's my feelings, and then at least it's known, but maybe it'll never solve it. It's not going to matter. But I always felt that was one of the biggest keys is in that some people misinterpret what that listening means is listening doesn't just mean hearing. It means listening.
Yeah.
It means
and a deep investment and care about what the other person, like it really is the ultimate lesson in not being self-centered. It's not, other phrase I love in Meisner, which is what I do depends not on myself, but on you.
Right.
So I'm completely dependent upon you to, I'm focused on you and what you're doing to give me information.
Yeah, because all too often that I would feel is that people wanted to give line deliveries.
Oh yeah, line yeah.
I get that because the emotions have to be at a certain place, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what if you find that it's taking you somewhere else? Don't fight that. Just flow, enjoy.
Yeah.
Then there's another aspect of it that a lot of people won't talk about where it depends on the director. Maybe a director will say, no, I don't want you guys going at that direction. And you're like, but it was happening naturally. What do you want us to do? And they'll just say, so back off. And then you just have to, reconfigure where your train is on the tracks. But some of the best acting is the kind that, as they say, it happens out of the moment. And you're like,
absolutely.
And you're like,
absolutely.
Came from organic nature. And it's like, that's where you get the meat and potatoes of the real things. I mean, heck, a lot of the improvised lines in film history are the best ones, which is so funny.
Yeah.
It's just ironic.
Which came out of a real response to something that happened. I mean, I think my favorite one is from The Hateful Eight, when Kurt Russell actually broke the guitar. He wasn't supposed to do that, and Jennifer Jason Leigh's like, "What?" That was like a real, because that wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah. Now, how was it too? He didn't know, but I'm sorry. Who's the actress alongside her? She's wonderful.
Jennifer Jason Leigh. That's
it. Jennifer Jason Leigh. I love her, and she apparently knew. Like, not because, I know it's one and he's going to break it. She happened to know, okay, that's the one. And he thought it was the prop.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God. And you're actually, speaking of Tarantino, there was the other one with Leonardo DiCaprio. He breaks his glass on his hand. And
Django.
Grabbing this gal, I don't remember the actress's name. And then he was getting blood all over her. And she was probably like, oh, good luck.
And I'm lucky that I'm grateful I came up in improv, because the best stuff that happened in improv was when there was a mistake.
Right.
That was like the best like stuff that was completely like, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen, you know?
And then you go with it.
Just go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves back in theater is when I would watch, you know, because I would go to a lot of shows and I'd see like a glass would fall over and then the actors would just ignore it.
Like they don't do anything.
Just clean it up. Like, I mean, even attempt it. Like, I remember that happened to me and I did it. It was great actually, because it made me more frustrated. And it just so happened, lucky, that I was supposed to be frustrated. So in that scene when I was like, you know what, blah, 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 and this, that, and the other, and I can't believe this, you know, then when it fell over, I was like, you see what I'm talking about? You just don't even care. You don't care.
That's the best. And that's the best. That's gold right there.
And I was cleaning it up. And of course, that never happened again, which was good because we didn't want to break glasses or spill. Like, nothing actually broke. It was a plastic glass, whatever, plastic container. But can be good moments. You know?
Yeah, that's the gold right there. I love it when stuff like that happens. And I know exactly what you're talking about, like where the glass falls over and the actor like doesn't respond to it. And that's not responding truthfully, right?
Yeah, certainly not. And it breaks
because it falls over, you're going to do something about it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned this too, because then I would say it also, what's more important is it breaks the audience out of it, and that's the worst part you can possibly do.
Because all of a sudden everybody's looking at the glass.
Yeah,
they're not. Why do you pick up that glass?
But even more importantly, that it's not so much the glass, that what it is they are disconnecting from the story and the character. Yeah. And then even you're like, oh, we got to get him back. I'm like, how are you going to do that? 5 minutes later, you'll get him back. But it's like, they just lost 5 minutes of what's ostensibly probably pretty important information. So given that was the maybe worst actor habit, what's the best habit that you feel that you have developed or that you like about acting?
I think again, it comes out of the recent Meisner training I've done of getting, looking at a piece, when you're given your sides and looking at a piece and doing writing about it, doing some writing around, who am I in this world? What is important to me? What do I need in this moment from this person? So getting in, doing the writing, and then looking at, what's the container? And Joseph Perlman talks about this. He's like, how can I go crazy within the container? Because it's like, he talks about making dangerous acting choices, and highly recommend him. You can find his stuff on YouTube. Great teacher. And so what can I do within this container? Like, where can I, and also what's the trap? Because I know my trap as an actor is to play irritation, and irritation just gives you nowhere to go.
Right.
It gives you nowhere to go. So I recently worked with my friend Tim Hulse on preparing for an audition on Actors Access, and I knew what the trap was. I think that the trap in this one was going to be, kind of being an irritated boss lady. Like, well, let me flip this. Let me make it so that I'm actually attracted to the guy I'm sort of bitching out.
Fair.
Flip this, because I know what the trap is here, and I know what my trap is.
Right.
How can I make a different choice? And that's been really helpful for me.
So let's see here. What's the worst advice you've been given other than being invited to be on this show?
Worst advice was being pushed to get an agent before I was ready. Mm-hmm. I did not need to. That was like when I first started embarking upon a professional acting career, I was very focused. I got to get an agent. Like, that's like the way in. And it wasn't. Wow. I had an interview with Marla Del Talent in San Francisco, and completely colossal belly flop. Was not prepared. Did not go in. You don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? And to their credit, they were very kind to me, and they recommended some classes. And they recommended Bruce Williams at Nancy Hayes Casting, and Bruce Williams was fantastic, and it was the right direction. They provided me with, you're not ready for us, but here's where you need to go to get there. Right. And to this day, I sincerely appreciate the kindness that they showed me, because, they could have just been like, yeah, no, we're not interested, bye. They said, hey, we see potential, go get some training. Any advice that I would give to a young actor, and have given, because I know of quite a few actors who are kind of starting out, is don't be focused on that. Don't be focused on getting the agent. do student films, do independent productions around the Bay Area, get your hands dirty in it, take classes, get the training. Training's mandatory.
Yeah.
Don't be focused on getting an agent or a manager, especially when you're just starting out. Because that was like, again, that was such a colossal belly flop. I went, I was like really Pollyanna, and like, yeah, put me in, coach, I'm ready to work. But I didn't have the skill set to back it up.
Yeah, that makes it difficult, and it's hard because I think all of it, it takes experience too. Like not everybody's going to have the experience level. And I think some of it too is slowing down the insight. It's too easy to just get wrapped up in, oh my God, it's like, yeah, but slow down a little bit. I mean, what are you trying to achieve with this character? Because I think that's another thing is somebody get so involved in, oh, I'm going to be this character and I can't wait to see myself on screen. And I'm like, those are just not good reasons for you to be there. I mean, that's maybe collateral or whatever you want to call it, but it's like, if you're focused, it's like you were reading out of the passage. If you're focused on these things, then it's sort of like you're driving your car and,
yeah, absolutely. You just
enjoy the scenery, but you got to do that maybe 1% of the time, not 90% of the time. You're going to crash the car, or you're not going to get to a destination because you're not looking where you're going. If you're not looking where you're going, you're not going to get to where you want to go. But what about a best advice which you have to offer out there, or did I already ask you?
Don't compare and despair. Avoid compare and despair. That's really easy to do, especially with social media, is to look at what other people doing, the successes they're having, and feel inadequate. Mm-hmm. I struggle with that too. I mean, I see friends who are doing things that I'm like, how come I'm not at the level that they are? Don't do that.
Right.
Redirect your focus to elsewhere, because when you compare and despair, you deplete yourself.
Yeah.
And, I would say to anyone starting, there's no one like you. We are completely unique as human beings. You have something to offer. And yeah, I mean, it's don't get into keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
Because you're not going to, you're going to go down a rabbit hole with that, and it's not going to help you.
Yeah, I agree completely. And how about this one? Kind of up to you whether you want to say it or not. Something that you've never told anyone, but you're willing to tell that to people out here in the interview world right now.
For years I've struggled with deep shame, mm-hmm. and self-doubt, and the imposter syndrome.
Right.
The good news is that I've heard recently that means I'm not a sociopath if I have imposter syndrome, so I'm very grateful for that.
Probably.
Around things that happened to me in my childhood, and what I have found is that I've been able to actually use those traumas to bring more of myself to the work. So that deep shame, deep self-loathing, deep feeling of inadequacy at a really core level. I mean, I feel that, and I have to work with that, but I also know that I can bring that to a character. I actually had the opportunity to do it last week on an independent short I worked on.
That's awesome.
Where I mined that, that deep feeling of not being good enough, being one of my biggest fears is being ignored, being overlooked.
Right.
And I feel that at a really deep level.
Of course. I think we all do. That's to some level, But no, that's really important. I'm glad that you shared that too. Thank you for sharing that, Saskia, because it's an important thing for actors, and I think all artists, that means writer, director, composer, to really bring the emotions to the forefront, not stuff them into the background. So if we even want to think of camera, foreground and background, you're like, reverse the process. A lot of people will go through their life and they say, oh, don't cry, don't get angry, don't do this. You cannot show don't do this. What is your problem? Just work hard, don't complain. And you're like, so basically what you're saying is almost all the emotional sets, just stow all that and only give me happiness.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to go ahead and go with, I don't think that is a healthy way for a human to go about their life.
And
let
I've done
alone
that for a lot of years. I mean, I've had this veneer of, it's so interesting because a lot of the places that I worked in my day job, they always thought I was this really strong person because I present really strongly.
Well, sure.
Would get hurt all the time, and I wouldn't say it. I would shove it down.
Yeah.
And I actually have a chronic health condition now as a result of that. So yeah, I decided when I was going to pursue this professionally that I wasn't going to do that anymore.
Yeah. Well, then that's important.
I want to live that way.
Yeah, that's important though too, because in a way, not to make it like a strange turning of the way you're talking about it, but like in a way that helps you as an actress, because if you do have these deep set emotions, you can call on them. But if someone is still in the box where they're like, nope, I don't go there, I'm like,
yeah,
you're still crippling your acting abilities then, because you're afraid to put your emotions out there for people to see. And that's, again, like we were kind of alluding to this whole discussion, that's just not a good way, not only as an actor to go about being an actor, but just not a good way to go about your life. Because then you're going to be 70 or 80 one day, or maybe you won't make it there, maybe we all get in a car accident, I don't know. But the point is, maybe you're 70 or 80 and people will say, hey, this is the end of it, what do you think? And you're going to say, I regret I never told this person what I felt, whether it was anger, love, or disappointment, blah, blah, blah. I regret that I didn't try this because I was scared I would fail. I regret. I should have said these things. I should have blown up at this person, but I just let them walk all, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And it's like, do you want to be that person when you're 70 or 80 or whatever? If your life is cut short, do you want to be like, oh, what if death was coming and you're like, I'm ready? Like, I would prefer that. And I would offer that to anybody. I would say, I would prefer that you could literally, if I said, death is at your door, and you're like, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm good. But it would suck if you were like, oh, no, please, no, not now. Like, no, like, what the hell? Then I would feel like, so in other words, there's a lot of things that you didn't do. You should have done.
Yeah, and I still feel that. I mean, I feel that about situations that have happened to me, that I think my biggest regret was not being truthful in the moment and really telling that person how, even if it would have cost me my job, tell the person like, hey, you can't treat me like this.
Exactly.
You just can't.
Yeah, that's fair. Those are good things to bring up. I'm glad that you are talking about them. I think it will do people good too if they hear this interview. So, shout outs to anybody who are going through the kinds of things that Saskia is talking about, because then that means at the very least, at least one other person in the world is doing it. And what do you want to bet that it's not just Saskia or myself? It might be thousands or hundreds of thousands.
I think that's a safe bet.
Probably. All right. So my final question for you too, that I got to ask, right? All right, come on, Saskia. Who's the diamond in the rough? Who are you going to recommend? They got it, they got it out their store. You know what I'm saying? Got to tell me a little something.
Well, I don't know if he would appreciate me calling him a diamond in the rough, but I have a dear friend, Jeff Lonzaga, who's a filmmaker in the Bay Area.
I know this person.
Do you know Jeff?
I do know Jeff.
I love Jeff.
This is so funny too, right? If Jeff is going to be able to see this video, I'll be like, Jeff, I'm coming for your ass.
He will welcome that challenge.
Well, the irony is, I might as well say this. I got to say this really quick. So I actually was Kylo Ren in a film that Jeff did where he does these wild and crazy. Yeah. So there's footage of me even on my own personal channel that I've popped in there, and I brought some of my own associates aboard it so we could do some lightsaber scenes for just a thing that he was doing. And then I was in another one, I think a year prior, and it was the same set of films. So shout out to Jeff for it's called Hetcha 2 and 3. Well, Saskia, it's been a pleasure. And thanks so much for coming on the Diamond discussion. And we'll obviously put some more links to Saskia's work in the description. Thank
you so much, Matthew. It really was a pleasure to talk to you today. And I love to do this with other creators in the Bay Area. And thank you for having me on. It sincerely was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Would you like to be a guest on the show, or do you know a diamond in the rough who should? Contact us, DiamondDragonsTale@gmail.com. Until then, Chion, Chifoy, Bas Rez, and Iye Laha.